And welcome to episode 78 of the TechnoBuffalo Show. I'm one of your two hosts for today, Sean Ani, editor-in-chief of the site. And I'm joined by Deputy Managing Editor Todd Hazelton.
Hey, everybody.
How you doing today, Todd?
Good.
Good. It's 1 week until you depart for MWC.
That's right.
Mobile World Congress, for those that aren't familiar. And so you will be here for the show next week. Well, timing may be different. We'll let everybody know.
Yeah, I have a lot of meetings next week leading up to Mobile World Congress, so we'll try to make sure we can get it scheduled in at some point.
Yep, we will get that figured out. But it should be an exciting time. Sounds like it's going to be a busy time, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's sort of like CES every year. We have that press day, like the first day of CES. And Mobile World Congress this year seems to have sort of one of those days. It's Sunday is really busy. And then well, the whole week's busy, I guess, but Sunday is like the big one where there's LG's event, Samsung's event, and I think Huawei was going to have something, but they haven't given me a time yet, or maybe they did, and I forget it. but and then, we don't have, at least from what it looks like, I don't have like a major Sony smartphone, and we don't have HTC. The latest rumors that maybe April 11th is going to be HTC's M10, or it might even have a new name, was the rumor today. So that's kind of nice in terms of just coverage and, allowing us we could do a better job when we're covering 2 phones versus 6 phones. It's just very hard. And the specs kind of all just run around in my head and you get them all mixed up. so it will be busy, but at least it's not, insane.
Yeah, it's definitely sounds like it's going to be a full week for you. And you wrote an article yesterday on the site, which it's funny. Sometimes you come up with these editorials. I'm like, I was thinking about the same thing 24 hours ago. But all I can figure is we're on the same wavelength. Yeah. But you wrote an editorial yesterday about, do we really need a Galaxy S7? Mm-hmm. And that's not saying that there's anything wrong with the Galaxy S7, and saying that the Galaxy S6 was so good, why release the S7?
Yeah,
so I'll let you explain all of your thoughts.
Well, I've been thinking it for a while, as I don't know, all of a sudden CES snuck up on us, and then like all of a sudden now it's Mobile World Congress, and I was driving a couple weeks ago and I was like, I can't believe the Galaxy S7's here. Like the Galaxy S6 still feels and looks very new. And maybe my mind was kind of tricked into that because the S6 Edge Plus and the Note 5 came out, later in the year or something. But I was just like, the S6 is great, still one of the best phones on the market. And in fact, I think it would still be one of the best phones on the market in 2016. And so I just figured I'd write this story saying, do we need an S7? And the conclusion is, of course we do. Of course Samsung does, because it needs to sell phones, and marketing-wise, it's going to be up against the LG's G5 and HTC's new smartphone if it's not a bust, and the iPhone 7, of course. So of course it needs to happen. But for consumers, it's we could go this whole year with a Galaxy S6 and probably the next 2 years, I don't know, and it would be totally fine. Like, we don't need it. There's going to be some upgrades that I think are, like, for me, I'll really like the micro SD card support is a rumor. Anything in regards to longer battery life is great, because the S6 kind of hurt there, and a faster processor, obviously. But one of the other things is, like, they're going to make camera tweaks and things like this. And it's like, camera tweaks on the S6 is amazing. Like, I don't need that. Sure, it could get better, I guess. But, at some point it's just like, what the heck? So I was just penning my thoughts on that, like, it's for the first time. I remember the Galaxy S5 when the S6 was coming out. There was a lot to be excited for, and this year I think there's a lot to be excited for. It's just that it's not like, I feel like we don't need it like ever before. And the same thing goes for what we've talked about with the iPhone 6 Plus, the iPhone 6s Plus. I mean, that was a great phone, and I bought the 6s Plus, and I felt it wasn't worth the upgrade. I mean, I don't even know why I spent that money. And that was another one of those situations where it's like, well, we didn't really need it.
Right, exactly. So do you feel that the companies now release new phones each year out of a sense of obligation?
Yeah, it seems like that. They're all pressured from one another to, like, get these phones out, and obviously they're sitting inside and researching it. And geez, Wall Street would go nuts if their phone sales are down because they didn't sell a new model. And you have people, traditionally, at least in the United States, on 2-year contracts. So, maybe they got the S5, and so these guys, they're ready for the S7. They skipped the S6. So like, that makes sense to me. But
True.
we've talked yesterday. Like, I don't think it's necessary. I mean, can you imagine? I mean, it's weird, right? Because you sit here and think technology moves so quickly that how could you not upgrade a phone, every year? Like the parts are ready. They need to get out there. But it's also like we could wait every 2 years too. It will never happen. In fact, I think if anything, it'll start to become quicker.
Yeah, exactly. It's never going to happen because, Samsung would sit around and go, well, LG is going to update. But you do bring up a good point about the 2-year contract. So somebody that has an S5, could very well be going, oh, well, I'm almost ready for my upgrade. I want an S7. But like I was telling you, as it stands right now, I still have the iPhone 6 Plus. I like it a lot. It's still working great. I don't feel any burning desire to run out for the iPhone 7. I'm sure there will be new features and all that, but also, everyone's on a budget.
Mm-hmm.
I can't just afford to buy a phone every time a new one comes around with new features.
Right.
So, but the problem you run into, especially with the iPhone, is, all right, if you don't buy it the month it comes out, then you start going into I'm 11 months away from the new one. I'm 10 months away from the new one.
I'll just wait.
Exactly. Right. And so you get in this weird cycle, so, all right, fine. Maybe I don't want the iPhone 7 right now, but do I want to wait all the way to the iPhone 7S?
Right.
That's tough.
For me, it's like at least with iPhones, and I did it with the 6S Plus, and again, I'm not sure why I did it, but for me, the upgrade, like I always want that big tick, I guess, upgrade. Like the 6, the 7, the 8. That's the one you want, at least with the iPhones, because I don't even use the features 3D touch and stuff like that Apple introduced in the latest one. I mean, I guess it's slightly faster and Touch ID is faster and stuff like that, but.
Right. And in your particular case, you are the head of the mobile division for a major technology blog. You kind of have to.
Yeah, it would be weird if I didn't. And Apple, like we've talked about in the past, doesn't always send us products. So it's like, shoot. Well, I'm kind of, I got to play with it. It's hard not to play with the latest from one of the largest makers of cell phones.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you're in an odd situation. But your average consumer, I've mentioned this before on the show. I love it when I go into a carrier store and I hear, the average person shopping for a phone, and it's such a different lexicon than we have. Mm-hmm. Oh, what's this? Oh, is that newer than what I have?
Yeah, right.
I don't know. So are these companies just doing it to compete with themselves? Or are they doing it to keep people like us going? It's hard to say, but you're right. The Galaxy S6 is still a great phone.
Yeah. I think it's that they're competing with one another for the most part, and they have to stand out, especially when you look at the Apple versus Android universe. And then even in Android, actually, especially because they have to differentiate. LG's got to be different than Samsung, then different than HTC, and offer features that they don't have. Like I have the V10 in front of me with its secondary display, for example, that sort of makes it stand out against the Galaxies out there. And then you've got HTC's A9 on the other hand here, and looks like an iPhone, but it's just they've all got to sort of do different things. And I feel like every year it has to be a one-up game, otherwise sort of what's the point? I mean, that's technology, right?
Well, we have two very similar questions from Brazen Franco and Session Bahal, and so I'm going to combine them a little bit here. Brazen asks, would it be better if the mobile industry did like GPU manufacturers and released a new device every 18 months? And on top of that, Session adds, and stop providing major updates to older devices, i.e. the iPhone 4S running 8.4 makes the phone almost unusable. I do think an 18-month cycle would be much more palatable. 12 months in the grand scheme of life is not very long.
No.
12 months goes by in the blink of an eye. you think about this, Todd, we're already just 11 months away from CES.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
It's weird because I don't think they'll ever go to like 18 months because it seems like every, chip makers are moving so quickly, and every time they get a new piece of technology, they're like, oh, let's jam this in. I mean, look, just what was it, like a year ago that fingerprint readers weren't really a thing, and now it's like most every phone that ships has one that works really well, which is a difference than just having one. And it's like, okay, once it's ready, let's put it out there and get it on the market versus, or they've done it. Now we have to do it. So let's make sure, it's on our next product. And that's why it's stuck to yearly, or even, I think it could be more than once a year. If you look at LG strategy, for example, in 2015, they had G4 and then V10, which was sort of the upgraded G4. Let's cram more features into this phone because they're ready. Or maybe they're not always ready. In the case of the V10, they were. But I think that's where we're going, which is crazy because it's, it's almost, they get upgraded so fast. I feel like that I play with the phones on my desk, and over the couple months, you get used to these new features like, oh, here's Touch ID, here's a secondary display, blah, 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 that like you really have to sit down and look at now versus like 8 months ago to see what has changed, because it almost blends together, like how quickly these phones build on top of one another.
Oh yeah, and I've told you before, I've gotten personally bad at keeping up, even though I work here, and I proof almost every article that goes out, I'm like, wait a minute, what? Didn't we just do which one? What's the name now?
Yeah, exactly. I always think of it like, when you haven't seen a friend in a long, like, you see a friend every single day, right? And they lose a lot of weight and you don't really notice it. But then, you go see another friend and they look at that friend. They're like, whoa, man, you lost a lot of weight. It's like when you see it every single day, it's hard to notice these things. But it's like if you take a break and go back to it, you're like, whoa, look at what changed.
Yeah.
And I think that's sort of the pace we're moving here. And for us, in the gadget blogs versus those people in the store you're talking about, they're like, what do I need again? What is this? Is this new?
I don't know. I don't think the companies are ever going to break themselves with this 12-month update cycle, and Brazen Franco brings up a good point about, what about Sony? Then they have a release cycle of 6 months.
Yeah, but do they really? I mean, we're talking about flagships versus like, if Sony makes it look that way, I feel like, and yes, I know they previously did, but for example, the Xperia Z5 and Z5 Compact just came to the United States like 2 days ago. And so it looks like 6 months, but those phones were introduced in September at IFA, right? I think. So it's been a while. And then and every phone manufacturer is releasing phones frequently throughout the year. They're just not all flagships. Because if you look at Samsung too, yes, they do have 2 flagship releases. They have the Note family and they have the Galaxy SX family, right? So it is a 6-month cycle in some cases.
Yeah. Sachin Bahal, I caught this when you said it earlier, and so did Sachin Bahal. You said something about, Apple doesn't always send us review products, and he asked, has Apple ever sent you guys products? I've heard Apple only sends review units to certain publications. Yeah, no, they have never sent us anything.
We buy the Apple products.
Yeah, every Apple product you see us review, unbox, or whatever, we had to go buy that. It's annoying.
Yeah.
Oh, is it annoying? Well, and we'll get to all the other questions that have come in. The second topic we wanted to touch on just very briefly today is that, Todd, you're going somewhere completely new to you this weekend.
I am. I'm going to Toy Fair.
I know. So the reason we're sending Todd to Toy Fair is, well, can't you just about see the Javits Center from your apartment window?
I probably could. There's been a building that's put up, but I can see the Manhattan, coastline, we'll call it.
Yeah, so it doesn't really cost us anything to send Todd to Toy Fair. And for those that don't know, I used to work in the toy industry. I went to Toy Fair from 92 to 96 every year, and I covered the industry. So we just decided, what the heck, let's send Todd over there. He's, lives right there. And I'm going to be really interested to hear your thoughts on it. You don't know what it was like in its heyday when, these companies were spending thousands of dollars on. I've told you personally in this example, to give you an idea how crazy Toy Fair was in the mid '90s, folks, Mattel was releasing a game called 13 Dead End Drive,
which was an amazing game. I love that game.
It was a board game for kids.
Yeah,
and they built an entire room that had props that moved, and they had an actor dressed as a butler that demonstrated the game to us and did a spiel, and then he'd make it look like the chandelier was dropping on you. They spent, I would say, easily each room was $15,000-$20,000. It was ridiculous, and now I believe it's more just like a standard trade show. Mm-hmm. But it's going to be interesting, especially since you are not that familiar with the toy industry.
No, actually, Sean had to send me a list of like what I'm going to go look for. Because, I mean, it was cool though. Like yesterday, I was thinking, I was planning my weekend with my wife, and I was like, "Yeah, I'm going to Toy Fair." And it's funny because, like, I'm excited to go, but I can't imagine how like my childhood self would have been like, "What? You're going to like a toy convention?" Which is really neat. So.
Yeah.
It's different. I think it's different. I don't know. But you're like, oh, take pictures of like these action figures and these toys. And, I'm used to going to shows and like looking for the phones. And Sean and I were joking because I'm not that familiar. So it's like, am I taking pictures of the old toys or the new ones? Like, how do I know? So I got to ask people, like, is this the new G.I. Joe? It'll be cool. Can I buy stuff there?
No.
Oh,
no.
It's like
now,
CES.
Some companies, I don't know how Mattel does it now. It used to be that every year they gave out a Toy Fair exclusive Hot Wheel.
Oh, that's cool.
And Matchbox did that as well. I don't know if they still do that because it's more, just crowds now.
Right.
But some companies will give you Toy Fair exclusive stuff, but you can't buy anything.
But I'm always looking for a board game or something to play.
No, you never know with the board game manufacturers because they're smaller and they want to get your attention. But there was we used to have a game when I was big in the toy industry. I had this bizarre ability that if you handed me the toy gun from an action figure without the action figure, just the toy gun, I could tell you what action figure it came from, how many colors it had been released in, how many different figures had used that gun.
Wow.
I was way into the toy industry. I knew all the paint variations. I knew everything. So yeah, I mean, for me, walking into Toy Fair, even to this day, I'd be able to go new, old, new, old,
wow,
and do it random, rather rapidly. But
yeah, like that's how I can do phone booths these days during the Mobile World Congress and stuff because they put out all their phones from like the last year or two or whatever, and you really got to focus on like the one model.
My first CES, John got busy and he had to send me to an HTC meeting that he had arranged. And I was still just learning everything. I get in there and I have to call him. I'm like, okay, they've got this phone on display. Old. They've got this phone on display. Old.
Yeah, exactly. I remember having to do that too.
It turned out they had nothing new in the room. And I was like, great. I walked all the way across the Vegas Convention Center to look at nothing but old phones.
Right.
Awesome. But no, it'll be interesting to hear your thoughts and feelings on seeing something like this. And it's a very business driven, because the toy industry is still a multi-billion-dollar industry. And also I'm sure you're going to see a lot of something that's growing a lot is smart toys, Bluetooth connected toys.
Nice.
The action figures themselves are starting to die off because kids have advanced so much. So I'll be really interested to see what sort of wacky things, because we just wrote up one story though about that Fisher Price teddy bear.
Yeah, the teddy bear that was like hackable or something.
Yeah, which that's disturbing as all get out.
Yeah.
I mean, something you give your kid and a hacker can get into it.
Yeah.
How long before the pedophiles figure out the route in? It's just,
yeah, it's kind of gross.
It is gross. And as somebody that loves the toy industry, I've always viewed toys, they are a form of art. A lot of people don't get that, but they are a form of art. I mean, I certainly couldn't sculpt these figures.
Right. Well, the other thing is too that they were saying about like, the Fisher Price and this toys, that I guess what you're saying too is these are toy designers and they design the toys, and maybe they add in some like connectivity features, and then that's it, and they don't pay attention so much to like the security. And they said that, you know, in the future these firms should hire security teams to make sure that they're also, you know, beefed up on that end, because, you know, that's not their expertise. It's toy building.
100% for sure they should.
Which I never thought about.
Yeah, I mean, this is not their area of expertise. These are people that for decades have known how to build action figures.
Right.
They're not coders. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see where the industry is moving. So moving over to the questions, which we have a bunch of here. Let me just scroll through here. Playing off a Toy Fair here for a second, Sachin Bahal asks a very interesting question about, do you believe the rumors that Mattel and Hasbro might merge? This is a story that popped up 20 years ago. And at that time, Mattel approached Hasbro. And the owner of Hasbro at that time, whose name is eluding me right this second, was well known for being a little off. And so Mattel eventually pulled out of it because Hasbro decided to fight the merger, and Mattel just decided that it was a hostile environment. So the rumor is now that Hasbro approached Mattel at the end of 2015 and talked to them about a possible merger. Rumors are now conflicting about whether those talks made any sort of progress or if they're even still ongoing. Mattel has always had a very, very large problem in the boys' toys department. And folks, before anyone starts talking about gender labels, I'm sorry, that's the industry refers to them as boys' toys and the industry refers to them as girls' toys. And that's the terminology I'm going to use. Mm-hmm. So Mattel's always had a very large problem with boys' toys. Plus, at the end of this year, they're losing the Disney Princess license, and which is going over to Hasbro. So they're going to lose a major stream of revenue. Hasbro, prior to obtaining the Disney Princess's license, only really had My Little Pony, and before that, they had a severe girls problem. So this really is like the perfect marriage of the two biggest titans, and it really wouldn't even violate the monopoly rules because they still would combined only control 25% of the industry. That being said, I don't know if they have very, very different corporate cultures. I mean, to give you an example, and again, this is 20 years ago, Mattel had armed guards in their building. They had an entire building on Fifth Avenue, or no, it was over on 6th Avenue. And they had guys with, you know, the earpieces in, mics in their sleeves, shoulder holsters, the whole bit. They tracked bags of trash moving through the building. I actually witnessed this. I'm not making this up. I actually witnessed a guy going, you know, janitor is cleared, you know, 0.13 or whatever it was he said. I'm standing there by the elevators. I'm just like, are you kidding me? Wow. You know, so Mattel is a very, very, you know, buttoned up corporate culture. Hasbro's always been a little bit more loosey-goosey. Hey, we play with toys all day. I don't know if the two could ever make it work, but we'll see. It'd be interesting to watch.
Rough.
Yeah. From Brazen Franco, in my opinion, Samsung needs an S7 because I want a new Galaxy where Samsung backtracks and brings back the removable battery. I think we all want that. We also all want to expand storage again.
Yeah, me too. And I agree. That's what I think there are like these upgrades that can be made every year, and whether they're upgrades or not. I mean, when you think about it, when Samsung introduced the Galaxy S6, they were like, oh, nobody wanted these things. It's all about cloud storage. Like manufacturers always go back and forth on this stuff. Like our, you know, research shows that nobody wants these things, and then everybody's up in arms. And, you know, when you take it away, then they bring it back. So I agree. They do need the S7. And that, like, that's sort of my point. Yes, of course you need these upgrades, but it's crazy to me now. I mean, the S6 is still a great phone. And I think for a long time there, a year was a long time. You had these phones that drastically changed in a year, and now they're drastically changing, but it's not needed, if that makes sense. You know, like I feel like when it comes to processors, like game developers and stuff like that, like they're just catching up to releasing games that run on these processors, and we're going to have new ones. So, I mean, it's good news for consumers. You aren't ready to upgrade. You still got a great phone.
Nice callback from Sachin Bahal about you going to Toy Fair. Don't set off any pedometers.
Yeah, that's right.
Wow, that's a callback and a half.
Yeah.
Fun question from Dan Voice. What was your favorite toy when you were a child?
I saw that. I was thinking, I think it was like 1988. So I was 3 years older. Maybe it was between 88 and 90. I had this, and I always think about it. My favorite toy. It was a Matchbox police car, and I've looked on eBay for it. I need to look on it again and try to buy it, but it was just a regular police car. I think that was my favorite toy ever.
Well, being slightly older than you, my favorite toy, I think it was released in, I want to say 80 or 81, and it was called Big Track. And it actually came back a few years ago. Somebody got the license and remade it. But what it was it was a futuristic battle tank with a keypad on the back, and you could program it to, go forward 8 feet, turn left, go 6 feet, turn left. So you could program it. I loved this toy. However, I didn't get to play with it that often because my father and uncle would keep appropriating it for me in lieu of helping me with it. At least that was always their story, that they were trying to help me program it. And I normally would just stand around and watch them play with it for a couple hours. But what was really cool was you could buy a accessory dump truck attachment that plugged into it, and so you could program it also to dump stuff out when it got to a certain location. And
it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun, but it was the early 80s, so technology wise, this was like radical and different. It was still crazy as all get out. Going down here from Jeff K. Thoughts on the G5 always on feature? They are touting it like it will be really awesome.
Yeah, it sounds cool. I mean, if you look at their current, the V10 has that too on that upper display. And I don't know if you guys can see it, but it's always on. It's just like one of those things, like, why always on? Like, waving your hand over it or tapping the screen to me is good enough. If it really doesn't hurt battery life, then fine, that's great. But if it does, I'd rather just have, a screen that's activated. It's just going to be for notifications and stuff like that, I'm assuming.
Yeah, battery life's my big concern there as well. I mean, I don't see any need for my screen to be always on. I just don't. I don't know why companies seem to think this is a feature we all want.
Well, here's what they say, and they said it with the V10. They're like, if I look at this now, I see the weather, I see a couple notifications, and the time and my battery life. And they were saying, well, it consumes more battery when you take off your phone, or take your phone out of your pocket, turn on the screen, look at the time, and turn it off again. Like, that whole process consumes a lot of battery versus just having this little section. And so maybe they figured out a way to enable it that the whole screen, or maybe it's a section of this. I don't know how it's going to work, but it's useful. It's just that I don't know. I don't like, how badly do we need this? Like, how badly do I need to see two little clouds Wednesday at February 10th, and that I have a Slack notification and a Hangouts notification? I mean, I don't know.
From Dan Voice, nowadays, more and more young children play video games or use tablets to watch videos instead of playing with real toys or going outside. What do you think of this? Will real toys totally disappear in the future? I've wondered about this for quite a while. As I've already said, I mean, my specialty was action figures. Mm-hmm. And the action figure market is definitely dwindling. It's still out there, but it's definitely become more of a collector-driven market. But as for what's happening in general with the toy area, yes, toy companies are going to have to rethink what they're doing, and we do need to get kids up and moving more. I think, we have a lot of babies being born inside of TechnoBuffalo. Joey just recently had a child, and John had his second child last week. And that was Joey's second child. And both of them, in my talking with them, they limit how much, as they call it, screen time their kids can have each day. And I think that's a great idea.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I can't imagine what I would be like if I was a child at this time. There's so much content. There's entertainment absolutely everywhere you turn that doesn't require you to move.
Yeah, it's weird. Like when I think about it, because I grew up with video games too and playing them, and it was always sort of like, you'd go to your friends and sleep over it, but you'd be outside all day and into the night playing like Manhunt or whatever, hide and seek, and then it's like the parents were like, okay, time to come in, and then you're in and you watch movies and play video games until you can't, or you got to go to sleep or whatever. And I always think about that versus like I see kids today, just like at the holidays and stuff, family, blah, blah, blah. Like young teens, late 9s and 10 years old, just like faces dog into like their Nintendo 3DSs, when families talking. And I get it. Adults are boring, like why hang out with us? But it's like, I remember at these family gatherings, like I'd be outside playing too, because I was like, adults are boring. I don't want to be around them, And it's sad in a lot of ways, but I can relate because I liked video games as a kid too. So it's like, how do you, I guess it's a parenting thing, or give them drones, right? Maybe go outside with a drone.
Yeah, great. There's a great idea. I'm sure that won't lead to any trouble.
$1,000 drone. Don't break anything.
Yeah. I actually read the other day that there are now more drones registered in the U.S. than there are pilotable aircraft.
Wow. That happened.
I'm not,
at least people are following the rules.
Yeah, which is a good thing. Let's see here. Jeff K wants to know what our favorite Super Bowl commercials were. He liked the Doritos ultrasound commercial. That's about the only commercial I've seen.
I liked that too,
except for the movie trailers. I watched all those.
Controversial in some circles.
Yeah, I don't know why. I was not in a Super Bowl mood this year.
I wasn't either. You know what? And I watched football. My wife stayed up and watched it. We actually, I guess we were talking about this. I finally canceled cable as well.
Yes.
So we streamed it through the Roku CBS Sports app, and I pay for Sling TV now, which is okay, and mainly just so my wife has HGTV. But that's a tangent. Anyway, Super Bowl, I was just like, meh. I was super tired. We were up skiing in Vermont, and I just fell asleep. I'm a Jets fan, and we didn't even get there. So.
Well, I mean, my dislike of the Super Bowl has absolutely nothing to do with the two teams that made it in this year. I've never cared for the game.
Yeah.
Just doesn't do anything for me. Let's see here from Sachin Bahal. Aren't U.S. carriers moving away or getting rid of 2-year contracts altogether? What's going to happen then?
Yes,
I think they are. I think it's just going to be a free-for-all.
Well, it's sort of getting into that early upgrade program stuff where it's like leasing a car. You sort of pay your monthly $27 for 24 months or 30 months or whatever. You get the lower payment. You hand in your phone and get a new one. That's fine if that's the way you want to do it. Personally, I think the smarter move, and I think the move best for most consumers, is to pay the lower amount, because you're not going to pay as much on carriers like AT&T or T-Mobile and stuff. If you buy an unlocked phone supported by the network, take it there, get their SIM card, and you're not paying like the device access fee or whatever they charge for these things. You're not paying that $27 a month. Go out there and get a Moto X or a OnePlus 2 or another phone. Just, I wouldn't buy it on a contract.
Yeah,
I'm done with those. They drive me nuts. Same with cable. That's why I cancel cable.
Yeah, no, totally, man. I'm trying to cut as many monthly bills out of my life as I can.
Yeah.
Let's see, from Jeff K here. If they don't put the removable back and SD card on the S7, Samsung will officially be BronyCon to me. Really, a My Little Pony joke? Yeah, I think they've got to add back in at least expandable memory.
Yeah, that's the rumor. I hope they do. I think they will.
Yeah,
especially now, like my thing is with Marshmallow, and I've talked about this before. Being able to format it as local storage is sweet. Like, there you go, boom.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, I know a lot of phone companies are now, well, it's the age of cloud storage. Let's just put everything in the cloud. I don't want to put everything in the cloud.
Yeah, right. Although I bought the Nextbit Robin smartphone, I think that starts shipping in like 8 days.
Yeah.
And that sort of like offloads stuff to the cloud and back, and I'm interested to see how that works.
Yeah. I don't know. We'll see where it goes. From Nick Quevedo, Pokemon's 20th anniversary is coming up. Do you guys have any memories with the series, such as venturing into the tall grass? That would definitely be a question for Joey, and nice callback to the tall grass jokes.
Yeah, right.
But Joey will probably be on in 2 weeks because Todd is here next week, but he's gone the following week. So I probably will have Joey on then so that we can talk games and stuff, and we'll have to talk to him about the 20th anniversary and make vanillish and tall grass jokes.
Yeah, that's going way back.
From Nick Quevedo. Oh, this is a fun question. What was a tech rumor you thought would be fake, but it ended up being real?
I mean, most recent would probably be like iPad Pro and the Pencil. I mean, for a little while when the rumors first surfaced, like what? Why would Apple do that?
Yeah, the iPad. I'd say the iPad Pro is a good call. I mean, because you and I had many talks about this is not happening.
Yeah,
and then Tim Cook
and then it became like pretty. Oh wow, I guess it is.
Yeah,
Same with iPhone 5C, right? Is that what it was? I don't know. If the plastic one. All these phones.
You mean the phone that was unapologetically plastic?
Yeah, that one. Like, I remember when they said Apple's going to announce 2 phones this year, and I was like, yeah, it'll be like, blah, blah, blah. And here it is. 5S and 5 are the 2 phones they're going to keep making. And then, wow, they had a 5C. It was plastic. And I was like, what the heck?
Greatest Joni Ives line ever. But
yeah. I guess like the surprising ones are Apple because it's just like what the heck?
Yeah, exactly.
Especially this year.
From Sachin Bahal, do you guys still buy phones from Carrier? And how many updates do you usually get during the time you have the phone? Updates, I have no idea. As for buying from the Carrier, no.
I don't. I bought the Priv from AT&T just so we had a second unit for review, and then I returned it and ended up getting the because it was quicker than just getting the direct one unlocked. So now I have the unlocked one. I don't have any phones bought directly from a carrier anymore. I buy straight up.
Yeah, I just prefer to buy straight up. I trade in almost every phone I buy, so I just prefer having it free and clear. And yes, it's a large initial cost, but then I go and I trade it in, get a couple $100 back out of it, and keep move on with my life. But I like not having to worry about is it unlocked? Do I need to get the unlock code and all that sort of stuff?
Yeah, that doesn't. The other thing that I think I've brought up in some shows is there's I have this we get to test all these phones. It's really fun. It's really cool. But there's something nice about having your own phone that you bought that has your stuff on it because they're such personal devices and. Whether or not the manufacturer actually needs it back soon or not, it's going to end up in Irvine. It's going to end up somewhere else. And I just like to have my own phone. So I always buy them myself, the ones I really like.
Well, same here. I mean, I am using a loaner LG G3 for my second line. And even though the G5 is coming out, it's still every time I use the G3, I'm like, this isn't my phone.
Yeah. It's like there's something in the back of your head that's just like, it's not mine. Darn it. I don't know. It's weird.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. It's, yeah, I don't know. From Brazen Franco, what about toys that are connected to the internet? What do you think about manufacturers collecting data about their users, especially with the event back in October/November where hackers managed to get access to all of that data, which also included pictures? That's just like what Todd and I were saying. They have to bring in true hardcore coders. First off, they should not be collecting that sort of data. But secondly, they've got to make sure all this stuff is as hack proof as possible. Yeah. You're playing around with children, and there's nothing that needs to be protected more in this world than children. And the toy companies are just going to have to suck it up and get some hardcore coders on staff. That's the only way there is to do this.
Yeah, or just hire the outside firms, I think is what the one article was saying. Like,
Yeah.
they eventually did, or they should have done in the first place.
I've got Jeff K and both Brazen Franco have asked this. Todd, have you returned anything this week?
No, I broke something and had to replace it though. My 128 gig micro SD card.
How did you do that?
I know. Well, I got the Xperia Z5 Compact in for review. It just came in, and I was putting it in, and I didn't look at the instructions because I don't do that anymore. And I was like, okay, it doesn't go this way. Pull it out, and that little scratch or whatever, it doesn't go in this way. Realization had apparently damaged, so that was kind of a bummer. So I didn't get to return it, but I had to order a new one. Yeah,
you waited so long to buy that card too.
Yeah, I know, but at least they're like $40 now.
I know.
I remember when they got down to 100, I was like, yeah. No,
craziness. Oh man, this is an in-depth question. From Dan Voice, what do you think was the best smartphone for its time since the release of the first iPhone?
For its time since the release of the first iPhone.
So what was the iPhone's biggest competition?
Yeah. I mean, I almost want to say the first Galaxy S.
I would say the S2.
S2.
The S really didn't seem to make much of a splash, but everybody seemed to be aware of the S2, and it was a darn good phone. I actually was sad when I gave up that loaner unit.
Yeah, that was great. And I'd say like close second would be probably the 1M7, which is an awesome phone. I mean, you see that was many years later.
Yeah,
I'd honestly have to sit down and like look at all the releases. Because you look at, I mean, the Palm Pre was like a big splash too, but it didn't splash as big as everybody thought.
Yeah, I don't know.
That was like when the Palm Pre was announced. I remember I was in the room, the press conference, and like all these other journalists, everybody was like, "Wow, like I'm actually gonna ditch my iPhone. Like I'm gonna go to Sprint." It was funny, and a lot of people said that. And then it came out, and it was cool. It just wasn't quite there.
And then came the creepy commercials.
Yeah, then came the creepy commercials.
Those may rank as the creepiest commercials ever.
Yeah, and there was a while too. Even I'm trying to think, like the BlackBerry Bold. There were a lot of phones that were coming out even after that first iPhone hit, where I would be like, "Well, the iPhone's cool, but I like BlackBerry Bold. It has BBM, and all my friends are on BBM and stuff like that." So there were quite a few phones that were, awesome. It's just progression of the iPhone too.
Yeah, Boy, that's a question I'd have to think a long.
I feel like the iPhone pushed all these manufacturers. You had Samsung, I can't remember the name, but they had this phone that was like also sold on Sprint that was like their iPhone killer, and Sprint marketed it that way, and it was just not even close. So you had all these phone manufacturers scrambling to create touchscreens that were as good as the iPhones. So you had phones like the BlackBerry, what the heck was it? Anyway, BlackBerry's first touchscreen, that one from Samsung I was saying on Sprint, and like they just didn't do it well, and so people were starting to be like, can they do it? And then it took a while, and Apple meanwhile was progressing with that sort of same technology and pushing further. Then it did the App Store. Windows Mobile had apps and stuff like that, but it wasn't as good or as powerful as these apps from the App Store, and I think that's sort of what pushed it. So you had a lot of great phones, but it took a while for them to really catch up, I'd say.
Yeah. Well, folks, that's going to bring this week's episode to a close. As always, we appreciate you joining us. You can find us on the iTunes store by searching for the TechnoBuffalo Show, and we do appreciate if you rate and review us. That does help out the show. You can also find us on Pocket Casts. You can subscribe via RSS feed. You can listen on the Stitcher app, which means you can listen to us anytime, anywhere. Until next time, I'm Sean Ani. I'm the editor-in-chief of TechnoBuffalo. I've been joined by Deputy Managing Editor Todd Hazelton.
Bye, everybody.
Until next week, take it easy, everyone. Bye-bye.